Hi guys, welcome back to Schauer Thoughts. My name is Sarah Schauer. This is a podcast for left and right brainers, middle brainers, anyone with a pons, medulla, anyone with any sort of, frontal lobes, temporal lobes, parietal lobes, occipital lobes. If you got one, welcome to the show. So what are we covering today, guys? We're covering going analog. Now, I do have to tell you guys ahead of time, I'm a huge fan of going analog, and this is going to be a very nuanced episode. Basically, I'm for it, but I do have some nuanced points and some points to make. Obviously, it'd be funny if I was just like, yeah, it's a good thing, and we should all, it is a good thing, and I'm excited to talk more about it. But before we get into that, how am I doing? Good. So last week I was talking about how I met with MIT Press, and they said that they were going to send me some books, and they did send me some books, and I've read a couple chapters of one of them. But I'm excited to read all of them. They're so fun. I'm going to tell you what they sent me. This is not sponsored by them, but MIT Press, if you're listening, I would love to do a partnership in the future. But here's like 4 of the books right now. So the first one, it's called Decolonizing Design, a Cultural Justice Guidebook by Elizabeth Dory Tunstall, and it is so good. I love like books on like decolonizing, like every single topic. I read Decolonizing Methodologies, Decolonizing Therapy. One of my favorite books is Research as Ceremony, and it's like indigenous methods of research. And so when I got this, I like screamed because I'm now in this I'm now studying like optics and how the brain actually like decodes, text and also pictures. And so it's cool to get and I talked about, designing your own course curriculum. And so to get sent Decolonizing Design is just so cool, and I've loved the first couple chapters. I'm going to mention it later in my discussion on going analog, but I love this one. Another one is Lucretius and the Bat with Blue Eyes, Explaining the Universe with the Alphabet. And again, for book club, I'm reading this book. Well, we're reading this book called Reading in the Brain by Stanislas Dehaene. And, he's talking about how the eyes actually decode like words and letters and breaks it down to like graphemes and all these sort of things. And so to read this one, Explaining the Universe with the Alphabet, I have kind of realized something in book club that we're about to get to the chapter on dyslexia, and he's like building up to discussing dyslexia and like the difficulties with, rhyming and like spoonerisms and stuff. And I think I might be a wee bit dyslexic because I was thinking about I think in kind of how, he's talking about the process of like, there's like a pictographic sort of stage, phonological stage, and then like, sort of like a meaning stage, orthographic stage. And I was raised in a very military home, and we moved around a lot. And I was trying to think about, like, I've changed schools a lot, especially in elementary school. I don't know if I ever got introduced to, it's going to sound weird, phonics, or like if I did, it was very, very minimal. Moving around a lot, you do kind of like skip some things or you repeat some things. And so I just know that I have an issue with decoding, and you guys hear it all the time when I try to read and pick up certain words, and my brain doesn't have sound. So like sounding them out with my mouth is just a process. And I do appreciate anyone who listens to me try to sound out a word and then they like tell me how it's pronounced, and I just got to keep practicing it. I'm trying, I really am. But yeah, so I'm excited about Lucretius and the Bat with the Blue Eyes. And what's also cool is that in the book that I'm reading in book club, we're reading, is they talk about synesthesia and, like how you can sort of process, or like there's like cross modal modalities of like, sensory perception. And it's just really cool. People with color, I think it's color grapheme, synesthesia, like they see numbers as actual colors, which is so cool when you think about what numbers represent, because the properties of colors are like, it's like the label, the color name, and then there's like hue and, hue, intensity, and then, bright and like darkness and lightness. And so like there's so many different levels to it already. When it comes to colors, it really does make sense to color like certain letters, which is so cool. And there's also some research that I have been getting into since I'm studying colors and like optics and all this stuff. There was recently, what is it? I have this, my butch was not making fun of me, but like she thought it was really cute. Every week I have this like note. This just says cool research. And then it's like week of March 30th. And so one of them is scientists finally figured out the math behind how you see color. Oh my God. And why, I mean, besides that just being cool, there's also another piece of research that came out, dopamine GPS, visual guidance beyond reward. Like the visual system and like reading and interpreting your surroundings. It's, this color perception is involved. And what's cool is like, I mean, obviously colors have like different wavelengths and different frequencies. So it makes sense that you could use them to navigate like what seems closer, like, or farther away, right? Or like lighter versus darker and lighter, you're going to have white and motion in the peripheral vision. And so it's really cool, like how your brain can just figure out distances with color. And then scientists figured out the math behind how you see color. And as a spatial visual thinker, let's just say, very excited. However, the one about the scientists figuring out the math behind how you see color is a bit more advanced math than I'm used to. So I'm slowly working my way through it. But it's the team behind the study created what might be the most accurate mathematical representation of photoreception ever. And then here's like a brief overview. Because our eyes perceive color using cones coded primarily for red, green, and blue, photoreception of color can be modeled using three-dimensional geometry. While scientists have tried to accurately portray this perception over the centuries, the most modern conception still can't explain certain visual phenomena. This new study takes a step outside of what's known as Riemannian model. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, creating what might be the most accurate mathematical representation of photoreception ever created. And this is just so incredibly cool. And so it's very math heavy, the actual study, but I'm excited to finally work my way through it. So that was just like cool of, And then I got another book on phenology, and phenology refers to when recurring seasonal events in plants and animals occur. And why I'm so excited about this one is because another area of study, this is so hard when you love research and learning. This is my year of medicine, but I know that next year I'm already preparing for is going to be history, linguistics, etymology, because I originally read The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli, and he's an incredible physicist. And he was talking about consciousness originally arose to keep track of time. And so this is, is the recurring phenology, is the recurring seasonal events in plants and animals. And there's like so many ways to keep track of time. Like, I also have been getting into studying the Mayan calendar. Such an incredible culture. Oh my God. They're also mentioned when it's talking about like reading in the brain. Mayans were they usually, most cultures represented like objects, body parts, posture, other sort of things. But there are like certain things that cultures really didn't create a symbol for, which is like a place or a house or faces. And it's really cool how this like translates to the brain. But Mayans were the culture that they singled out that did attempt to, they did make symbols for faces. And it's really cool. And then because later in the chapter, they talk about like no culture really at this point in language really approached like conveying and like showing abstract sort of concepts, or an abstract meaning more like more deities and these sort of things. But Mayans were very much like representing they were creating symbols of faces, and they were also very much heavily involved in, so it was just cool. And so Mayan calendar, and then, you have the Aztecs coming along, and the Mayans are incredibly isolated in the Americas, and most of the countries they were talking about is like, the Greeks and sort of like, Swana area. And then, so there's like a topic on TikTok where it's called African time, and it's people in Africa have a unique relationship to time. And so Mayan calendar, African time, and then also Aboriginal culture in Australia. There was something I was looking up, and they have a term, I think it's called deep time. And so it's just cool when you think about, like, if time is a way to, consciousness came about to keep track of time. These are like ancient continuous cultures, like Aboriginal culture is the longest continuous culture, like, in the world. And so it's cool, like, these are the original people, like, talking about how they've first conceived of, or like how their relationship to time and consciousness. And that's just so cool. So I'm excited to learn about it. But I know that I'm going to skip way ahead when it comes to, like, I think I'm going to do international studies as well, because it's just like, oh God, there's so many cool things to learn about. And then I got another book called Sweet and Deadly: How Coca-Cola Spreads Disinformation and Makes Us Sick. And I'm excited about this one. I will say I do like Diet Coke, but it's, makes us, I'm assuming it makes us sick, but, okay. And then I got another one because I was talking to the MIT press lady. It's just fun to get to nerd out with someone. I was watching this TikTok about letter locking. It's basically like when you would send letters back in the day, you wanted to make sure that no one would open them or, read them and take information. So they came up with, like, letter locking. And I have this massive book called Letter Locking: The Hidden History of the Letter. And I'm going to link all these down below. This is not sponsored by them, but MIT Press, I love you, and I would love to be sponsored by you. But that's just, those are all the things I'm reading about. Some really cool research. Oh my God. Also, there was, in the book Reading in the Brain, they were talking about the invention of vowels, or the introduction of vowels. And I can't get into it, but it's just so cool. Like, the invention of vowels, like, cannot be understated in terms of, like, democratizing language, and it just made it so accessible. But yeah, we're gonna get into going analog. Woo! Let's get analog. Alrighty. So I just have to fill you in on what's happening with the trend. This is just an article from The Guardian, and we're gonna read it. Oh, I love that it gave me this article is more than a month old. That's fine, honestly. Oh, okay. Analog is back, and my millennial heart couldn't be happier, by Teo Barrow. When daily life feels like a black hole of apps and feeds, it's no surprise we crave the intimacy of physical media. Usually my handbag is a medley of digital devices and life essentials: my phone, iPad, chargers, keys, tampons. But lately, you're likely to also find a half-done newspaper crossword, a ton of stationery, the book I've restarted 3 times, and whatever scraps and trinkets I've picked up throughout the day to put in my scrapbook. Analog is back, and it feels like we need it now more than ever. In a world where getting just about anything done means being sucked into a digital black hole of apps, sign-up forms, harrowing social media feeds, and carnivorous advertisers, it's no surprise that we keep reaching back for the comfort of the physical. Polaroids, vinyl records, real birthday cards. It all helps us slow down and appreciate a world where not everything is online. The most recent return to analog has been marked by a surge in popularity of physical media and, quote, grandma hobbies like crosswords, knitting, and crafting. Meanwhile, companies also seeing a shift. The arts and crafts company Michaels said that search for analog hobbies on its site have gone up 136% in the last 6 months, while Google Trends suggests a 160% increase in searches for the same term. My own return to analog finds itself manifested in major scrapbooking projects, taking my notes by hand, converting my digital journal into a physical one, and carving out dedicated time during which my cell phone functions like a landline, meaning I have nothing but calls coming through that bad boy. And while I hate to prove my mother's generation right in affirming that life would be better if it wasn't for all those damn screens, I fear they were onto something. Leaning into analog has helped me stay off my phone, forced me to be present in my activities, and helped me embrace the sensory joy of it all. From rifling through my purse for a pen or taking in the smell of an old book, to seeing my own handwriting and spending time rewinding cassette tapes. Interacting so intimately with the things we enjoy just feels good. And then the quote, the uniqueness of physical media, defects and all, add to the thrill of experiencing things you can actually touch. I love when a vinyl has a scratch that no other has, when an old photograph has a message written on the back, or when my crossword pages bear the markings of my failed guesses. These are pieces that add real texture to our experiences and color to our memories. And I feel very lucky that my analog life is a rediscovery for me. I've lived long enough to have my own library of analog things and see how they become a time capsule, a monument to times past and the things we loved. In that way, I think one of the best parts of the analog experience is we actually get to keep the stuff we use. Books gone out of print, I still have my own signed copy. Putting on some music, well, let me tell you the story about how I found this record at the old record store that doesn't exist anymore. Yes, the digital world means less clutter and less physical waste, yay, paperless, but for all its promises of efficiency, productivity, and just making life easier, the digital world leaves much to be desired. An email just doesn't hold the same emotional and tactile quality as a handwritten note from a loved one, and not even the best filters can recreate the feeling of looking at a good Polaroid. As I rebuild my own personal archive of old things, I focus on gathering stuff that I really need and thinking carefully about how to make my new hobbies and systems as sustainable as possible. Analog media adds a layer of ownership and intimacy over our experiences of the world that is simply impossible to replicate when those experiences are mediated by a screen and via tech companies. And while we're nowhere near a post-screen era, the appeal of analog tells me we haven't completely lost touch with the world around us. And I completely agree. So my thing is that obviously I love going analog. I mean, people always... We'll get into it. I love scrapbooking. I love crafting. I love making stuff with my hands. My butch and I painted each other the other day, and it's just nice to paint. I will say, I when I painted her, the final product looks a little bit gray, and I painted her to try to do like her eyes dramatically closed. But she looked at it and she was like, "So that kind of looks like an autopsy photo. Like it's good, it's realistic, but it does look like she is no longer with us." So I was like, "Oh, maybe a little bit less gray in here." Sorry, I was trying to tone down some stuff, but and obviously I love reading. I love annotating. I'm creating my own personal library, and my books mean like so much to me. They're just so fun to reread and go through. I mean, with this episode, I reread a couple books. I mean, I skimmed through two, but like I've already read them and annotated them, as you'll see in a second if you're watching on YouTube. And then the other one I like read all the way through. But I love revisiting, and it just seems like everything is a subscription now. Like you have to pay to use your own printer. Like even if you rent or you buy something on, a streaming platform, then they have the ability to take back your purchase. There's also, planned obsolescence of where like you buy a new phone and then they're like, "Hey, we're going to break this. So you have to get a new one." And it's just nice to actually have physical things that really do, help you slow down and get you offline and feel like they're physically yours, the benefits of like physical media. And why I wanted to record this episode is I'm a huge fan of it, but also what pissed me off was there's a lot of great Substack articles. There's a lot of great like papers and stuff about going analog. There's a lot of great TikToks about going analog. However, there's a lot of online content on Substack and TikTok, particularly making fun of people going analog. Now, going analog is not a woman exclusive sort of thing. Obviously, anyone can go analog, but you'll notice the theme of when people are ripping apart the trend. I have yet to find one person who's using a screenshot of a woman who's over the age of maybe 22. And so it's a lot of Gen Alpha, Gen Z young women going analog. And yeah, they will post their, what's in my analog bag online. But they're just excited to share, I understand, we want to consume responsibly, absolutely. And I will very much address the capitalism angle of this. It's actually like my entire spiel. But I do want us to all zoom out sometimes. If you realize, and then the thing is when I went on TikTok, there was a lot of people, ripping apart the analog trend. And then I went to the people who rip apart a trend, and I tried to find them ripping apart a trend concerning men. Largely men, none, right? So we're all focused on the girls. Oh, but I'm not interested in what men are doing. I don't care. You're focusing in on young girls, young women, right? I don't know if you've listened to anyone in Gen Z or Gen Alpha and what they've experienced over the past couple of years, or you've been alerted to the news at all. But Gen Z is talking about, COVID is still ongoing and it very much messed us all up. But Gen Z really and Gen Alpha, it really, really delayed a lot of things. It's stuck inside. There's school shootings were on the rise. The thing is I went to school. I got out of high school in 2012, and school shootings were starting to really pick up. We obviously, there was a bunch of different school shootings, but they're going to school every day, and they're scared, and they're for a real reason, right? And then also being locked inside, and then at least with millennials, we did remember a time before screens, so we got to have a childhood, go outside. When you're live in fear, kept inside, be on your phone, that makes sense that would happen. And so when I see all these, oh my God, it just breaks my heart to see the teenage girls and the girls just younger than me. So just this is, I got a disposable camera, and I got a book from the library, and here's some cool pens I invested into. When I see people making fun of these girls doing their haul, I understand you want to approach from a capitalism angle and consumerism. But the thing is that's kind of comes with the territory when it's analog. It's digital, it has to, it's not, digital like your hands, but it's not digital. Analog, you touch it. It's materials. That's why the whole thing about going digital and your phone is that it's, an email, it's it's email, it's camera, it's social media apps, it's a banking sort of thing. It's it's all these things pushed into one. So yes, there will be a wee bit of increased spending, or I am going to discuss other ways to acquire materials that doesn't, cost as much, or, we are going to discuss the library cards, very much down for that. But I just I hear, if you're if you're a woman, or, people have treated you as such, or people have treated you as less than in any sort of conceivable way. Especially young women just get their hobbies mocked so severely. And when it comes to going analog, it's yeah, they are spending money, but this is I saw a girl with a side satchel that it couldn't have been more than $20. So I understand, but can we back off for a second? Because I am going to give a side-by-side comparison of another hobby that has been on the rise very recently. Sports betting. We're going to do a side-by-side comparison of market share of crafting supplies, and then sports betting and all of its sort of adjacent things. Now, is this to say that I think that you should not even attempt to consume ethically when you're going analog? No. I've made an entire podcast episode on thought-terminating cliches. My catchphrase right now is nuance, right? Rarely are things black and white. And black and white sort of way of framing things is a pillar of white supremacy. So obviously there is nuance. Consume ethically, right? And I do want to, quickly cover some advice. I do have advice for people going analog, especially, before, if you're going to dive into a hobby specifically, what I recommend is going to the library, getting a library card, and there's a whole bunch of arts and crafts books that you can rent, so you can go through them and see if this is something that you'd like to invest in. I know, especially having ADHD, and a lot of my followers have ADHD, we do that thing of where we buy all the supplies, and then when it comes down to it, we're oh, this is too much. So what I would recommend is like starting off with a book on the craft you'd like to get into. And if you can get through most of the book and you're like still interested in it, then let's go for it, right? But it's just a way that it's not totally, you're not committing to it, you're not jumping the gun. And then I do also have a bunch of sources to like places to find materials that are like cheaper, inexpensive, or recycled or already like repurposed. There is, there's something called the Analog Life Project. Some things to know before we get started. And it's a Substack when it comes to like, more ethically sourced materials and ways to be more conscientious about the materials that you're using. Just something to consider. And I also am going to link some creative reuse centers. There's one where it's like the art of recycle. It's going to give you a list of creative reuse centers state by state. So if you do have some extra leftover craft materials that you'd like to donate, I'm going to link below where you could donate those things if you're like, oh, this is not, what I'm getting into. But the website also hosts some free art classes. So if you're like, I'd like to get into art, this is a great website to visit. They also have a variety of clubs to join for drawing, crochet and knitting, writing, sewing. And it really is so much easier to start a habit with others. Now, I know this trend is going analog. And so, you could just, this is an online sort of course, but it's just a way to get support with other people and other people who have insights and experience. And then also what's cool about the creative reuse centers is like, if you donate the craft supplies you don't want or need anymore, it is going to go to other crafters, or they also have teachers. You can sign up for free art supplies on this website. So it's just a way to, if you're going analog, specifically the crafting routes, or like when it comes to, things like make sure you want to really do this. You don't have to, but I'm just saying there's a lot of things to check before you dive straight into it. That being said, I love going analog. I love when people have hobbies. It's like one of my greatest joys I love Legos, and a lot of people are like, how do you clean Legos? And it's microfiber cloth with WD-40, and it takes a lot of time, but hell, just put on a podcast and then just kind of like go to town. Literally, if you're a Lego city collector, I'm sorry. You have to go like quite slowly. I love people who love art and creating music. Hobbies is so great. You need to express yourself. I've read too many books on the brain now. You really got to express yourself. But so the main thing, like I was talking about, that bugs me about this is that there's such a zoom in on, most people's point is that like, oh, capitalism is going to take advantage of the going analog sort of trend. And I understand what you're saying, but this is where I'm actually going to get to use my almost finished degree. I double majored in marketing and business analytics. I also worked in advertising for a while as a copywriter for some pretty big brands. And when it comes to going analog, most people in business, and we are going to talk about investors and venture capitalism. Oh my gosh, yesterday, when I was researching for this, I was in a research neck of the woods. I have not often frequented economics, psychology, and then a whole bunch of econ stuff, and I had to like relearn a whole bunch of terms. But when it comes to where capitalism as a system is probably going to invest most of their energy when it comes to up and coming trends, because they can see multiple at once. As you get pitched ideas all the time, especially when it comes to investors or like businesses looking to expand. I need you guys to imagine this pitch, right? So we have a bunch of young women with very low purchasing power who want to buy stuff that, like notebooks and books and crafting materials in an attempt to get offline and improve their mental health. Now, there are going to be obviously some companies that take advantage of that. Like Canon is probably going to, start with like sort of film, like, disposable film, but they already have that market pretty much cornered. I can't see a new company coming out and reinventing a disposable camera. So there's going to be like CVS, Canon, all the other like photography companies they're gonna be like, okay, maybe we'll create like another type of aesthetic thing. And then when it comes to books, Barnes and Noble and Amazon, like if there's small bookstores, but like major chains being like, let's take advantage of this analog series. The main people who are going to take advantage of that are like bookstores who are just excited that people are reading, because there is also the anti-intellectualism trend, right? So like I feel like libraries and bookstores were like, oh yes, well, let's go analog. But it's there is a benefit to reading and investing in books. And then there's also obviously craft stores, and craft stores, that market is again like you got Michaels and all them, and getting into crafting supplies, especially in an increasingly digital world. When it comes to, if I was a venture capitalist and you were pitching going analog, or like I was a business, I'd be like, the thing is what would actually, I'm going to speak like a venture capitalist. Okay. So you're telling me a very small group of mainly young women don't want to be online anymore, but online we're getting more digital. Okay, so we're going back in time, and you want us to, we're not gonna really create new products as like notebooks and books and all this stuff is already like made by people. And then the thing is with going analog, you have to source materials, right? Tactile sort of things. So that would just be another cost, right? We got labor to assemble the parts. We gotta source the parts, the materials, and then we got like all the tariffs going on. It's not looking like, and then also, they want to improve their mental health. They're also young women who are far beyond the point of realizing like that a company cannot sell you happiness. So if we're going to take an emotional approach, we're probably going to go nostalgia route, and nostalgia route does sell. However, nostalgia as an emotion when it comes to sales comes and goes quite frequently. So this is something that like, it could be a huge hit or miss. And I'm just going to say, as someone who does likely cocaine, I don't really see myself investing in sort of long-term offline solutions in industries that are already well established. And considering the economic situation in this country, and when it comes to, creating and sourcing parts, I'm just going to say it's a no for me. So what I'm saying is, I understand the capitalism angle, yes, and some companies that already exist will be taking advantage of it. Is that necessarily all bad? No. Is there an ethical way to consume? Absolutely. But if we want to be realistic about who capitalism is going to take advantage of, and the increasingly digital era, and making sure that they don't have to actually create a product, it's going to be online gambling. Now, when you put going analog and online gambling side by side, because they are both rising trends that are resonating with the youth. One is a bit more feminized and one is a bit more masculinized, but hey, gender is a construct. We all can craft or bet online. But if you were, if I was a venture capitalist again, I would invest heavily in gambling more than going analog, because if we're also taking, let me just review this, and why I mention them together is because there's been such a spotlight on the hobbies of young women, and this is going to be something that I, as a lesbian, am saying. We do need to take men's mental health a lot more seriously. I know, like, the thing is they're actually not doing too great, and I know the system. I understand that quite well. However, when it comes to gambling is an addiction. And when it comes to addiction, I am an alcoholic. And I know I have the book that I reread called Undoing Drugs, How Harm Reduction is Changing the Future of Drugs and Addiction. If you see a massive addiction crisis going on, and the market for it just keeps increasing, and it's a lot of men, and there's obviously a lot of women, we have to start taking this seriously. And it really doesn't help that we're just always focusing on what a group of young women could be doing differently. Hey, Did you know that every time you buy new crayons, like it just feels like those memes where it's like you drinking out of a paper straw versus like an oil company like dumping like 300 million tons of oil in the Gulf Coast. I understand that the people going analog consume ethically, because I do have a bunch of sources I'd like you to look into, and I very much encourage it. Reading and crafting and getting off your phone and just kind of harm reduction for like phone usage is great. And for all the people who are saying, oh, but they're sharing it online, I'm sorry. If we're talking about analog to digital, there are a lot of people who like put records, records online. Like, I mean, yeah, like there's obviously the people who you listen to records and they're like, oh, well, this is not how you're supposed to listen to it. There's literally like the remaster version. This was originally recorded as a record and now you can listen to it on Spotify. Yeah, you can share analog things online. Like, I mean, but the thing is they're still getting offline and they're kind of just periodically updating, similar to your favorite recording artist who peaked in the 70s and 80s. Like they put their analog records online. You don't see them being like, well, this defeats the purpose. Why would you do this? Because it just makes it more accessible. You also have to consider the accessibility angle. My gosh. And we're in an increasingly digital era, like to assume that someone could just hop off the internet when it's so baked into everything that we do. It's just, we need to be approached from a harm reduction sort of standpoint. And harm reduction, as always, is context dependent. I will read more about it. But now that we've gotten that sort of wind up, I did want to read about sports betting. Actually, let me read this CNBC article and how they talk about $230 notebooks, digital cameras, and tiny dollhouse furniture, how Gen Z's desire to get offline is a boon for business. Leslie Edelman has run Tiny Dollhouse, a miniature figurine shop in New York's Upper East Side neighborhood for 35 years. 18 months ago, new clientele started routinely coming to the store, he says. In addition to Edelman's regulars, parents, grandparents, and collectors, groups of 20-somethings now flock to the store on Saturday afternoons. They giggle amongst themselves, text furiously, and buy tiny Labubu keychains, Pez dispensers, and mock E-Ames chairs. Some tell Edelman, I've seen you on TikTok, he says. There's a hell of a lot of picture taking, says Edelman, a 75-year-old lifelong New Yorker. Business owners like Edelman say they've noticed a shift in consumer behavior. Gen Zers increasingly seek out and spending money on old school hobbies and habits in an effort to get more offline. For small businesses that sell tactile, nostalgic products and services like rotary phones, needlepoint kits, or embroidery services, average shopper age is down and revenue is up from extant and new customers alike, some owners say. Craft-based activities and retro-style in-person experiences have steadily gained in popularity since the COVID-19 pandemic, says Marnie Shapiro, a co-founder and managing partner of research and consulting firm The Retail Tracker. Specifically, physical products related to offline hobbies have hit a new sales peak this winter as the phrase going analog achieved social media virality, she says. Nearly 3/4 of adults participated in a crafting project in 2025, up from 62% in 2019, according to Mintel Research. The art and craft material industry was valued at $23.56 billion in 2025, led by supply companies like Crayola and Faber-Castell, according to a Fortune Business Insider report. If we are going more and more digital and using more AI, the counter trend is going to be very tactile, Shapiro says. Nostalgia, to me, is the single biggest retail trend out there. It's not dying, it's getting stronger. Hobbies to keep idle hands busy. Louise Carmen, a Paris-based company, sells accessorized leather journals at 2 storefronts and online for up to £189, or approximately $232 before customizations. The brand reached a new American audience over the course of 2023, says founder Nathalie Valmarie, after her daughter started filming bird's eye view TikTok videos of employees' hands as they personalized leather notebooks with engravings, colorful cords, and charms. The videos racked up views, some surpassing 1 million, and roughly 60% of Louise Carmen's Online sales now ship to the U.S., says Val Marie. Some Americans have even posted online about booking transatlantic flights to buy the notebooks in Paris. Political and economic uncertainty, like a turbulent job market, declining home ownership, and the rising costs of living in the U.S., tends to send people clamoring back to the products, styles, and experiences of their or their parents' childhood, says Shapiro. Plus, the more time you spend scrolling on your phone, the more likely you are to engage with media about that uncertainty. So hobbies that keep idle hands busy are in increasingly high demand. Journaling helps Val Marie collect and reflect on her thoughts and be creative, she says. She suspects younger generations benefit even more from the practice. Gen Zers lives and experiences have been, quote, exposed on social media, posted from them or to their friends or their families since they were very young, she says. When handwriting in journals, they don't have to perform, they can just be honest. Part of going analog involves aesthetics, too. Nostalgia-looking products can be a fashion statement, says Camp Snap president Trevor George. His Redondo Beach, California-based company sells screen-free digital cameras that automatically apply film-mimicking filter effects to photos ranging from $70 to $200 a piece. Since launching in late 2023, the brand has sold over 1 million cameras, George says. The company's sales were up by 350% at the end of last year compared to the same period in 2024, he says, and celebrities like Taylor Swift and Idris Elba have been spotted with Camp Snap products. The smartphones are a bit tired, he says, to be out with your friends or in community. He pulls out what looks like an old camera but really has digital features. It's kind of like a personal statement. The life cycle of nostalgia trends. Gen Z consumers are now between the ages of 14 and 29, meaning many are at an age where they want to explore their identity and have a little money to do so, says Peter Fader, a marketing professor who focuses on consumer behavior at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. In one sense, the generation's affinity for analog products, or modernized versions of them, represent many Gen Zers' oft-cited desire to resist the mainstream, Fader says. In other sense, they're doing exactly the same thing as generations before them. Going analog isn't all that different than millennials' obsession with Polaroid cameras and record players in the 2010s, says Fader. Yeah, I bought a record player and I still use it to this day. And I also have Polaroid cameras. So it's also just like kind of funny when people are like, look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like trying to what? Experience a childhood? Yeah, they had to buy stuff for it. Because, I mean, if you don't have the thing that you needed to perform the task, then yeah, you're going to have to buy stuff for it. Plenty of Gen Zers still post about their analog experiences online, which Fader says is evidence of modern technology's convenience and deep roots in many people's lives. But even going analog for a little while may help people discover new and rewarding hobbies that make their lives better, he says. This analog thing, I'm not going to say it's a passing fad because there will continue to be a fad with each generation, but I would not be betting big on a big analog rebirth, says Fader. The popularity of any kind of nostalgia is bound to ebb and flow, Shapiro says. Edelman suspects his shop will survive for decades because people want physical items that can elicit strong memories, he says. People can create the living room they'll never have, Edelman says. He still remembers the first dollhouse he built for his niece decades ago, a pink Victorian-style mansion with white trim and tiny dark brown shingles. I feel like there's a warmth and a comfort in looking at these things, holding them. And so the thing is they did also kind of highlight $230 notebooks, but you are talking about custom leather-bound, embossed notebooks. And then when it comes to people making dollhouses, they did specifically mention that a lot of them are coming in to take photos. So most people who are probably coming in to take photos are probably younger generation. Does it mean that they're buying them? And then we can also consider the fact that when it comes to market share and when it comes like the capital from crafting, not all of them are going to be from the going analog trend. But this is not me in defense of this is me in defense of things are expensive as shit. And I just see a bunch of people making fun of girls or young people or who just were denied a childhood and sucked into an increasingly online horrendous world and just wanting the ability to escape for 1 second, right? And they're prioritizing their mental health. Are some of them consuming in a way that is a bit unresponsible? Absolutely. And if you're an influencer, it doesn't matter what age you are, you should be looking at are we talking about if we have the ability to purchase more materials that are out of the realm of fast fashion, if you have the resources for it, then you probably should not be doing large hauls like that, as we do need to care about the environment, right? But it's just when it comes to cause for concern, and the younger generation and what they're investing their time or resources into. Going analog is the thing that I am like, this is not. It's like, oh, you're posting about it online. Again, if you've listened to a song from the 60s when it was recorded on a record, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? I want us to open up the scope, because now we're going to talk about another growing trend with the younger generation. And again, it's not exclusive to the younger generations. However, it's just something that is troubling. Also, just to note that they said for the market share, or the art and craft materials industry was valued at $23.56 billion in 2025. Okay, so $23.56 billion is a lot, but when you compare it right next to gambling, it's almost nothing. And that's not saying that it's not nothing. I'm saying that when you look at where capitalism is really taking advantage of people, it's going to be online gambling. And now the thing is even with the going analog trend, some people are going to get a return on investment, right? They're going to make a craft, journal, read a book, feel better about themselves. And there's something that's helping their mental health. Now, when you look at investing your time, energy, resources, and not buying new physical media, but just adding some apps on your phone, there's almost no return on investment for a lot of betting. And also, gambling historically has very much made mental health very bad. And so there's a lot of people who are gambling with their friends, like Kashi and all these sort of apps. The way to really build and solidify a belief and be part of the crowd is if you do it with friends. And the analog people, this is why I encourage you to do it with friends, to like make it something you maintain. Gambling with friends, oh God. But and I'm saying this in a non-judgmental way. I say this in a genuinely concerned way as an alcoholic and as someone who a large portion of my audience has had addiction issues in the past or knows someone with addiction issues. So this is by the Harvard Gazette. Sports betting worries grow as wagers skyrocket. Experts see rise in gambling problems, possible wider cultural fallout. Americans have taken an increasingly dim view of sports betting in the 7 years since the Supreme Court overturned a federal ban, as online wagers have skyrocketed, igniting concerns over the personal and social costs. According to a recent poll from the Pew Research Center, 43% of U.S. adults say the fact that sports betting is now legal in much of the country is a bad thing for society. That's up from 34% in 2022. Harvard experts and others suggest that gambling addiction appears to be growing as a public health concern for individuals, and some see the likelihood of wider economic fallout. Counselors have reported a growing number of patients with gambling problems, and a February study in JAMA Internal Medicine noted that internet searches for gambling addiction have risen 23% nationally from the 2018 court ruling through June 2024. When new forms of gambling appear, the rate of savings go down. Then you see the rate of credit card defaults go up, and you see the rate of mortgage defaults going up. So these are long-term financial and societal costs with broad implications, says Malcolm Sparrow, professor of the practice of public management at Harvard's John F. Kennedy School of Government. Having it on your phone with push notifications and constant advertisements is able to kind of hijack your brain in a really fascinating way. Before, you'd have to drive to a casino, and I think that served as a bit of a barrier. That's a pull quote from Spencer Andrews. In the U.S., the floodgates for sports betting were opened in 2018 following a Supreme Court decision to overturn a federal sports gambling ban and turn over regulation to state governments. Currently, 39 U.S. states have passed legislation legalizing sports betting in some form. The JAMA study found that total sports wagers increased from $4.9 billion during 2017 to $121.1 billion during 2023. With 94% of wagers during 2023 being placed online. It takes between 5 and 7 years before countries become more painfully aware of all the misery that increased access wreaks on public health, public finances, and so on, said Sparrow, much of whose work involves studying the regulation of societal risks, including gambling. The initial push for legalization stemmed from a desire for state governments to create an alternative form of tax revenue. Lobbyists for sports betting companies have downplayed the addictive nature of the behavior, experts say. It made a lot of sense to do. It was popular and everyone was going to make money off it, said Spencer Andrews, a student fellow at Harvard's Petrie Flom Center. Andrews, who spent several years as a research fellow at the National Institute of Health, is the author of a 2-part series for the Bill of Health blog regarding the dangers of sports betting. And so, like he said, it made a lot of sense to do. It was popular and everyone was going to make money off of it. If I was a venture capitalist, or if I was, money hungry, blood sucking, someone who's just part of the 1%, and I had to look at which one is going to be more worthy of investing in, like which one is going to have more long-term ramifications and payouts for me. It's not going to be the young women going on eBay trying to buy a first generation iPod for $150. I mean, even then, like, what? Are you saying that I should buy up all the previous generation iPods and then now sell them for a profit on eBay myself? Why would I do that when I could just create like a new app where you can gamble if, Elon Musk shows up to a football game? I don't have to make anything new for that other than an app. I could just underpay a bunch of programmers, or I could just, use AI to program this god-awful dog shit app. Everyone put their financial information on it. And of course, we get hacked in a couple of years' time. And then there's like a news report about everyone's social security number, again, has been leaked. If I'm a 1% piece of shit douchebag, I'm like, the girls, fuck them. Like, I'm so sorry. It's going to be taking advantage of like people who are like online sports betting. And I'm not saying this in a mocking way. I'm saying like, the guy said it was popular and everyone was going to make money off of it. So then continued, I just think it's a short-sighted decision, he said. In the end, as ubiquitous as it is now, it's clearly gotten out of hand. In his series, Andrews picks up on the aspects of sports betting that, according to psychologists, lends itself to addictive behavior. Having it on your phone with push notifications and constant advertisements is able to kind of hijack your brain in a really fascinating way. Before, you'd have to drive to a casino. And I mean, so the thing is if you're trying to implement harm reduction when it comes to sports betting, honestly, this is harm reduction, which is not a perfect solution, right? Maybe just take it off your phone. Actually, no, drive to the casino. You know what? I'm going to link some sources below for addiction recovery, especially when it comes to gambling. So Debbie LaPlante, director of the Division of Addiction at the Cambridge Health Alliance and an associate professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, says she thinks it may be hard for clinicians to spot and treat negative sports betting behaviors because most have so little experience with it. Many healthcare providers don't have the knowledge, skills, or tools to address gambling-related problems among their clients and patients, she said. LaPlante suggests making screening for gambling widely available for healthcare professionals to better connect people to help. Sometimes people don't recognize when gambling is causing a problem, she said. Sparrow added that research suggests that even mild participation in sports betting may be harmful. We suspect up to 50% of gamblers suffer some degree of harm and regret, and a much broader definition say it's having an adverse effect on their life, and they've tried to stop but can't, he said. Now, that's not enough to get you designated as a problem gambler, but it still means it's having a lasting detrimental effect in one dimension of life or another. Some safeguards have been implemented in recent years. Some sports betting apps allow users to set loss limits, and nearly every advertisement for sports betting across the U.S. is accompanied by addiction helpline information. Andrews added that banning advertising during sports events may help state governments cut down on risky betting. It's kind of like a cigarette brand advertising at a nicotine lovers conference or something. It's a cheat code, he said. At the end of the day, the government owes their consumers a protection from being led astray by private interests. And I think taking a step back and letting anything happen here is just not the answer. Sparrow said another strategy is for states that haven't approved online sports betting to stand firm. The industry would like to have us all believe that it's inevitable all 50 will get there eventually, he said. The economic benefits are grossly overemphasized in the policy debates leading up to the legislation or increased legislation, and that's a deliberate tactic on behalf of the industry. So I was researching comparing craft and market size, and then also when it came to sports betting. So for crafting on the Fortune Business Insights, they have art and craft materials, market size, share and industry analysis by type, basic materials, supplies, and marking materials, supplies, acrylic, oil paints, and others. So they have some key market insights. The global art and craft materials market size was valued at USD 23.56 billion in 2025. The market is projected to grow from 24.68 billion in 2026 to 40.68 billion by 2034. North America dominated the keyword market with a market share of 33.33% in 2025. Now, this is the global arts and crafts market. So we're at 40.68 billion. And then, so there's market drivers, growing interest in art and craft activities to favor market expansion. There's also rising popularity of digital artworks. That to hamper market growth, emergence of, yes. So they have, I read the entire thing, right? I'm not saying that, this is nothing. I'm saying that if you were to compare it next to online gambling market 2025-2030, size, share, and trend analysis report by type, sports betting, casinos, poker, bingo, by device, desktop, mobile, by region, North America, Europe, Asia, Pacific, Latin America, Middle East, and Africa, and segment forecasts. And so Europe online gambling industry dominated globally in 2024, accounting for over 41% of global share. And I do have resources for gambling addiction for Europeans, also linked below. It's done by country, so you can find, connect with a resource from your country. But the online gambling market summary, the global online gambling market size was estimated at 78.66 billion in 2024 and is projected to reach 153.57 billion by 2030. So then the projected market size is 153.57 billion. Now, the thing is the global arts and crafts, right? You also have to consider that a lot of these are like businesses who are contributing to this as well. This is, online gambling, which is mainly individuals. I mean, there are some individuals who do run gambling businesses like casinos and that sort of thing, but they're probably a very small percentage of where this money is coming from. When it comes to arts and crafts supplies, that could be for schools as well, for community centers, for individuals, right? It's going to be a whole lot of community sort of focused income. This is for online gambling. It's going to be mainly individual. And so that is a huge, huge number. If by 2030, it's going to be $153.57 billion. And at least you could see a lot more people getting more help, mental health and community support from arts and crafts, especially when it comes to a teaching context, as opposed to gambling, right? There are going to be a few winners, but there's also going to be a lot of people who are not going to do so well. The thing is everyone is so worried that a bunch of businesses are going to hop on this trend, the going analog trend. And I need us to really zoom out for a second. Where's the money and people who are when it comes to capitalism and looking at the people that they could take advantage of, it's a tough choice for the 1%, young women or people with addiction issues. It's almost like, who do I take advantage of more? But when you consider who has more access to capital, right? Less support for, controlling behavior, what is more easily accessible, quick, doesn't require much material costs or returns, it's going to be gambling. And so I'm not saying, when we discuss the capitalism angle, I feel like we should have a couple industries involved as just examining one alone. And also considering the fact that women didn't get bank accounts until 1978, I think. And that's not this. I know that women do a majority of the spending in the home, but it's for the home. And so it's also the invention of credit cards, in the 90s. So it's interesting that women historically have not had access to their own funds, and we see this trend And I'm not saying that women are innocent in the game of patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy. Abso-fucking-lutely not. I am saying that we see young women, low, like actual, like money, social capital, all of the mental health resources, healthcare is an absolute shit show. There's not a lot of services for them. They have the money that they have, and they bought a secondhand first generation iPod in a $20 satchel, and they stopped and they filmed a "What's in my analog bag" video. I need us all to pause, be like, okay, you're sharing it online. We'll have our hee-hees, our ha-has, erase your entire discography from the Beatles and the Rolling Stones because they also recorded it for analog and now it's on digital. So I don't know, cognitive dissonance, but like they post about it online and we're like, you justice could, And right next to them are a bunch of people. There was this story about this group of guys. Like one guy in a frat was going out with a girl, and this girl's father was someone famous, and then a bunch of people just bet money that this famous guy would show up to the Super Bowl. They all just did it as like, and we're not talking about that. The thing is I know there are a lot of men and a lot of people talking about that, but like that's bad. That is really, really bad. Because I mean, this girl's spending $150 on an iPod first generation. A lot of young men and a lot of people in sports betting are spending $150 on if Elon Musk showed up to the Super Bowl, right? What's the end game for that? Like, oh yeah, you some people could get money, but a lot of people aren't. And it's just like I'm going to say this as we should care about men's mental health. This is bad. Like, this is so bad. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm sorry for getting loud. But, so yeah. I do have an example of the article. Celebrities at the Super Bowl, the who will attend the big game prediction market. Super Bowl, the most recent one, was a real payday for prediction markets, while Leonardo DiCaprio and Jason Kelce cashed in for yes traders. The real profit was in the no column. Both Swift and Messi stayed home, making their no contracts the big winners. So they're betting on if Taylor Swift showed up to the Super Bowl, Elon Musk, Leonardo DiCaprio, and there is no mental health end game with that other than just the temporary relief of not losing the money that you invested in. If Taylor Swift, like you said, oh, she's not going to show up, she doesn't, and you're like, okay, fine, I can live another day. You didn't really, but addiction is very hard. But yeah, does anyone see how this is like messed? I feel like I'm dancing around a lot of words, but I think I'm just absolutely hurt for the next generation. Like, I understand social media addiction, and I understand tech use, and I understand just addiction in general. And when I see online sports betting and gambling ads, I don't laugh. I'm not happy that a lot of people doing online gambling are young men. Addiction is hard. And, the increase in people to like helplines to get help for addictions is just depressing. Because when it comes to getting sober or helping yourself or harm reduction, the thing that's really going to deter you from getting a lot of help or like kind of slow you down a lot of times is your friends. Because if you use with your friends and, your friends are like your family and your social group, and yeah, they can treat you like shit sometimes, but you're not only giving up addiction, you're now giving up your like friends and family. So that's what's even more deterring. And so, when you see the jokes about, place a bet with your friends, you're like, oh, this is going to be really, really hard. And the current financials, we're insolvent as a country. We are broke. And a lot of companies are just preying on people who are preying on people with addiction issues. What's new? In the 80s, from this, like actually the entire U.S. history, just preying on people with addiction issues, and then leading to unhoused population, and then carceral state. So I understand there's very much a capitalism angle with analog and, consuming ethically and very much care for the environment. And, but I encourage finding a group. And then also, when it comes to sports gambling and all these sort of things, I know you're not buying new materials, but you're also, it's just a horrible cycle to be stuck in. And I do worry about younger generations and like millennials, especially when it comes to lack of health services and healthcare, mental health. And so this is why this really mattered to me. I saw everyone mocking the girls, and then I saw the same people ignoring the guys. And I understand who set this system up. I understand. But at the end of the day, as a millennial who's 31, who is acutely aware of what is financially on this country's horizon, I am so worried about the generation after me, and especially sure as fuck Generation Alpha. I have been studying Parkinson's. I don't know anyone with Parkinson's. I don't think I have it. But after reading about screen apnea last year and social media addiction, and I read Dopamine Nation as well, there's an increased rise in Parkinson's in Gen Z. And it's like a lot of it is getting linked back to like, I don't want to say, okay, but there's like a rise of colon cancer in younger generations and Parkinson's in younger generations. And Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're not going to have, I know we got dog shit healthcare right now, but they're not going to have anything. Gen Alpha's not going to have shit. And so like, I just think, we all talk about what boomers have done to us, right? Like, how hard it is to buy a house. And, they basically pulled up the ladder. They refuse to sell their homes or leave their jobs, or, they vote against everyone else's like humanity. And I don't want to be that. When I listen to Gen Z and Gen Alpha talk about how their childhood was just so fucked up, and I see them like wanting to, journal or, excited to share. I'm sorry. Oh, now I'm emotional. But like, I don't know, like, they like a lot of like Gen Alpha doesn't have like the right to vote, and we're so totally screwing them over. I just cannot be the next, I can't be the next boomer. You know what I mean? I cannot pull the ladder up. It's going to stay down, or I'm going to stay on the ground level. Because I can't do what my parents did to me to someone else. So, cut people some slack. If you're going to like, encourage someone like crafting or going analog, before you critique them, take a quick glance at like what they have. Like, is it clearly like stuff they got at like a, Walmart's or, like Five Below. Yeah, that is like cheaper materials, but, I would just use context clues to kind of evaluate the situation and maybe like, hey, if you don't, if you're having like excess or you decided you don't want to do this, here's like a cool like group you can recycle stuff with, or, a nice place to donate books. And then just for when it comes to the online gambling community, I say this because a lot of people who follow me are for addiction recovery. It's really hard. It's really kind of unwise to tell someone they have a gambling problem unless you do it in a sort of intervention sort of setting, in a like with members of their family, and then even then it's not guaranteed to go well. When it comes to addiction, the best thing you could do to help other people is model, like lead by example. So especially if you've struggled with addiction before, and you see someone struggling with gambling addiction, just like trying to befriend them, like get to know them more, and just like, because you understand how they feel, and then also giving them resources. I am gonna link some below. Addiction is a very like dicey area, and a lot of people go straight for shame. And the thing is shame is not new or helpful when it comes to the addiction community. Oh, like how else are they going to know that what they're doing is bad? Trust me, they feel bad. When I was drinking, I felt bad all the time. I knew that I had to stop. And then someone just reminding me was like a slap in the face. I mean, granted, sometimes it was like a righteous slap in the face, but like connecting them with resources or groups of people who don't gamble or who have, experience with addiction, because I think we're all just kind of focusing on the wrong things at this point. Sorry, that just got me like so emotional. I as someone, I mean, like just getting people, young people, whether they be men or women or like, it doesn't really matter. It's just, when you talk about online sports gambling, it's mainly going to be a lot of dudes, and then going analog is going to be a lot of women, just focusing on how, micromanaging women's sort of things, and then completely neglecting a whole bunch of dudes. And then, we have yet another addiction crisis happening. And I mean, the government controls like the lottery. So the government is really not going to step in when it comes to curbing gambling. This entire country was founded on gambling, lottery systems. Ask your local university how they chose their first round of students. Truly just sheer dumb luck. Yeah. And so I'm going to put a whole bunch of resources below. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. I just can't get over the cognitive dissonance of how little the next generation has, and then mocking them for it when they just want to live a childhood, and then how little we have financially, and then the next generations are just getting absolutely bombarded with gambling ads, and it's horrifying. So yeah, I have a book. This one it's about harm reduction. It's called Undoing Drugs: How Harm Reduction is Changing the Future of Drugs and Addiction. Now, there's a couple different types of addiction. There's like substance and non-substance addiction. Like, so substance addiction would be like drugs and alcohol, and like non-substance would be like sex, gambling, and that sort of thing. But basically, harm reduction is a set of strategies and tactics which encourages users to reduce harm done to themselves and their communities by licit and illicit drug use. By allowing users access to the tools to become healthier, we recognize the competency of their efforts to protect themselves, their loved ones, and their communities. So I am going to provide some resources for America and the international community, especially Europeans, and then just a little bit more about harm reduction. Harm reduction is context dependent. That means that determining what can be labeled as part of the movement will change over time and can be a subject of ongoing debates. At the same time, this difficulty and fluidity also gives it continual room for excitement, new ideas, and growth. And so I'm also saying, if you have when it comes to going analog, you have very limited funds, and you have to buy from Walmart, and you're beating yourself up for that. Don't. If you have limited resource, like, and access to it, like, you still deserve the right to, express yourself and get into the arts. And also there are some sites that I can, that I'm gonna link below for like more affordable crafting materials. This is sort of me just speaking to the general public. Next time we critique trends, can we take a wee bit of a step back? And but thank you guys so much for listening. This has been Schauer Thoughts. Make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok. Rate me 5 stars. Subscribe to me on YouTube. I also sorry, this just got me emotional because I'm like, oh my God, we can't keep doing this. But thank you guys so much for listening. Everything will be linked below. And I hope you have an incredible week. And I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.